As some of you know, The Adventures of Pete and Pete is my personal favorite live-action program ever aired on Nickelodeon. The show is about two brothers, both named Pete, played by Mike Morona and Danny Temporelli respectively, going through their everyday lives growing up as a kid and a teenager, but with a surreal twist. And I mean a very surreal twist. There's so much idiosyncratic moments and odd characters with strange personalities in this show that they can easily fit right in a Wes Anderson film. But at the same time, it was a smartly done show that never talks down to its audience. It had deep discussions about topics from contemplating on the vast universe and its inhabitants to understanding that sometimes things as useless as algebra can be helpful in dire situations. Its origin started off very simple in 1989, where the creators Will McRobb and Chris Viscardi released 24 one-minute shorts as interstitials that ran during the commercials. They became so popular that from 1991 to 1992, there were 5 episodes that were made to see if The Adventures of Pete and Pete could work as a full-fledged 24-minute TV series. Long story short, it did. The show was picked up on November 1993, airing 3 seasons. The 5 episodes would eventually be dubbed by the fans as the pilot season, and today we're going to be taking a look at the very first episode of that season and compare it to the TV series. The pilot just so happens to be a Valentine's Day episode, and just a few days ago it celebrated its 25th anniversary. If that isn't perfect timing, then I don't know what is. With that out of the way, let's get started on today's episode of From Pilot to Final Product. The pilot, titled Valentine's Day Massacre, starts off with Big Pete doing his usual narration discussing about the events that happened not too long ago on Valentine's Day.
It all started right here on a 50-yard line with a sky-high whirling discus throw that killed an innocent squid. It ended here, too, on Valentine's Day at 7:07 a.m. in a massive showdown between me and this gruesome sandwich-eating mutant named Open-Face. We stood right on this spot, hating each other's guts in the freezing cold. Until, well, you'll find out. My name's Pete, by the way. This here's my brother, Pete. Yeah, we come back here every now and then to pay respects to the squid I killed. It's true. I killed it. But it was an accident, I swear. You see, my dad's this guy who always wanted to be a discus thrower in the Olympics. Sometimes he even sneaks out at night and pretends he's champion of the world. He kept bugging me to practice, so at least someone in our family could be on a cereal box. I said, no thanks.
Don Wrigley, otherwise known as Dad, is known for having numerous hobbies, from taking care of his lawn in the episode What We Did on Our Summer Vacation, being king of the road on road trips in the episode King of the Road, and fishing in the episode on Golden Pete. But the sport he seems to be the most obsessive over is bowling. In the episode New Year's Pete, Don is involved with a bowling team known as Cranston Spaggle. Then there's the episode When Pete's Collide, when Don decides to give his prize bowling ball, Rolling Thunder, to one of the Petes after outgrowing her. The mention of Don being obsessed with discus is never mentioned again throughout the series. When Big Pete threw the discus, it fell into a bucket, killing the mascot of the school, a squid named Edna. Big Pete comes up with the idea of burying the squid at the 50-yard line with Little Pete and his best friend Ellen, played by Allison Finelli, promising that they'll keep the incident a secret. Another subplot that's featured in the pilot is Big Pete's crush on his math teacher, Miss Fingerwood, played by Sid Straw. Miss Fingerwood is heavily obsessed with math, and this would carry on to the 2 episodes she was featured in the show.
I'll never forget that Christmas morning. The river was 1.3 miles wide, and there I was, swimming the Australian crawl at a forward acceleration of 0.04 seconds per second.
Plus, there was something about the way she drew her twos that I liked a lot.
This little detail about Miss Fingerwood and the number 2 would be featured in the episode X equals Y, in which it's brought up that when she was a baby, she was comforted by the number so much she thought it was her mother. You can even see a picture of the number 2 on her desk, and she even calls him Mama when saying an algebra problem.
Train X leaves Ovid at 2:22 p.m. Mama.
However, there are 2 things I want to bring up that's a bit startling now when watching the show again. First off, Miss Fingerwood seems to switch grades when teaching math. In the episode Hard Days Pete, she's Little Pete's math teacher. In X equals Y, she's Big Pete's and Ellen's math teacher again. You can argue that it's possible that a teacher can teach both elementary and high school, but when looking at it, it's a bit off-putting. Now, to get off topic for just a minute, it's pretty interesting that in the episode X equals Y, that Ellen is questioning about why is she taking algebra, but in the episode, What We Did on Our Summer Vacation, she uses trigonometry so she can be able to locate Mr. Tasty after he disappeared, and he starts showing up in different parts of the country. Now, I'm not a huge math expert, but don't you need to take algebra in order for you to take trigonometry? Isn't trigonometry a lot harder than algebra? I don't know, but feel free to correct me if you want. Alright, let's get back on topic. The second thing that's a bit odd in this episode is that Big Pete has a huge crush on Miss Fingerwood. He even reads a poem for her in front of the whole class.
I declared my love for her. If 1 is the loneliest number, then x plus 1 over the circumference of a full moon equals the square root of eternity. Us eating donuts together beneath a willow tree.
The girls that Big Pete would have a crush on at least had the reasoning that he thought they looked beautiful. But for Miss Fingerwood, she's very plain looking, she smells like chalk, and her obsession with math is not something that Big Pete would be attracted to. Even Ellen is confused that Pete has a thing for her.
How could you possibly be in love with Miss Fingerwood?
I don't know. She swam across the Mississippi on Christmas.
She's 31 years old and smells like chalk.
She doesn't act 31.
Pete, she calculates the speed of electricity for fun.
You just don't understand.
So once again, it's a bit odd when looking back on it. But in this episode, he's not the only one who's smitten with the math teacher. The man in charge of taking care of the school mascot and painting the lines on the football field, named Mr. Beverley, played by Richard Edson, also has a huge crush on Miss Fingerwood. But there's one person who's not happy about Big Pete fondling over the math teacher, and that would be his arch enemy, Openface, a bully who loves eating open-faced sandwiches played by Jason Late. He approaches Mr. Beverley over at the school's garage alongside with his lackeys Milk Mustache, Ink Stain, Audi, Gravy Breath, and Butt Streak to let him know about Big Pete's fondling over Miss Fingerwood. Mr. Beverley becomes heavily jealous when hearing about this news. Openface makes a deal with Mr. Beverley that in exchange for getting Big Pete to no longer setting eyes over Miss Fingerwood, he would receive the squid mascot. Mr. Beverley hesitates on it since he believed that Edna ran away from him because of his crush on Miss Fingerwood. But when Openface promises that he would set Edna free on the ocean, Mr. Beverley accepts. But in reality, Openface would have used Edna so he can gain more power since he would have had possession over the school mascot. The squid, being the mascot of the school, would later carry on in the series, with the episode Day of the Dot, in which Ellen was given the task of being the dot in the eye for the word squid for the marching band. This episode brings up one of the biggest questions of all time. Is Ellen a kid or a squid? You decide. Anywho, back to the pilot. Openface and his gang approach the Pete brothers, threatening him to stay away from Miss Fingerwood, otherwise he would suffer the consequences. Big Pete refuses, so Openface beats him up, and Big Pete ends up getting a faint black eye and a band-aid on his cheek. Ellen becomes very upset that Pete is still determined to get Miss Fingerwood. She eventually walks away, no longer wanting to help him with his dilemma. But things begin to brighten up a bit for him when one day at class, when the students and teacher reenact the speed of different planets rotating of the sun, Miss Fingerwood notices Pete's face and starts paying attention to him. Openface's plan begins to backfire, and Mr. Beverley finds out when looking through his telescope. With that, Openface comes up with another plan. He decides to confront Little Pete to spill Big Pete's deepest, darkest secrets so he can use it to blackmail him. Little Pete refuses, and Openface grabs Little Pete's arm and draws doodles with a permanent marker over his tattoo Petunia. With the exception of the opening intro and a handful of the shorts, this is the first time we're introduced to Petunia. The origins of where Little Pete got Petunia is a bit unknown, but according to the internet, because everything on the internet is correct, there apparently was a lost short where he got a temporary tattoo of Petunia around Mother's Day, and he hadn't removed it ever since. Again, this is just a little theory, and it hasn't been 100% confirmed by the creators. Also, if you look at Little Pete's back in the episodes What We Did on Our Summer Vacation and Splashdown, he has a second tattoo of a sailing ship. But that begs the question on whether it's real or not. If it's not real, then why is it that in subsequent episodes we don't see any remnants of the permanent marker? If he would have washed it, the tattoo would have been gone. If it was real, then what sick, twisted person would give a kid an actual tattoo? But then again, I'm totally analyzing this. He might have a ton of Petunia tattoos in a small shoebox or a drawer in his room that he can apply whenever some parts of the material is chipping away. Well, regardless, Little Pete did not squeal to Openface, so he decides to target another person, his best friend Ellen. But instead of threatening or physically beating her, he instead lays his charm on her.
You look as lovely as the Hoover Dam today, Ellen.
The mention of the Hoover Dam would later be mentioned in the episode How We Spent Our Summer Vacation, where the Pete's parents went on their honeymoon. It would also play a huge part of the plot in the episode King of the Road, where every year the Wrigley family would go on a road trip to the Hoover Dam. The charming compliments didn't work for Ellen, so Openface decides to share his sandwiches with her, and she slowly warms up to him by accepting a date with him to fly kites. But as time went on, both of the dates don't go too well, with Miss Fingerwood wanting to talk about only math, and Openface being a bit abrasive to Ellen. However, Openface charms her just enough to ask her if she knew any of Big Pete's deep dark secrets. We then cut to later that night where Big Pete was awoken from a surreal nightmare by a letter attached to a marshmallow sandwich by Openface, saying to meet him after school in the football field where they would settle things once and for all. The next day, Big Pete meets up with Openface and his gang, as well as Mr. Beverley and Miss Fingerwood. She's confused as to why she was called there in the first place. Openface then begins to hint to Big Pete that he knows his deep dark secret and is about to tell it to everyone. Little Pete hears this, and he walkie-talkies Ellen, letting her know that Big Pete is in huge trouble. Ellen rides her bike to the school football field as fast as she could, but she's unfortunately too late as Big Pete finally reveals to Mr. Beverley that he accidentally killed Edna and buried her at the 50-yard line. Both Mr. Beverley and Openface were shocked at the news, yet both took it very differently. Mr. Beverley was upset at first, but when learning that Big Pete, Little Pete, and Ellen buried her respectively by humming the school theme song and wearing her uniform, he's more understanding and felt that she was buried with dignity. Openface is upset because now he won't be able to get his prize squid in return for helping Mr. Beverley hooking up with Miss Fingerwood.
Mr. Beverley!
I was jealous. I didn't know what to do.
I don't know what to say.
Before you say anything, would you come with me? As for you, Openface, stay off the line. You cannot do this! I am Openface!
You heard him, Eugene. Scram!
I'll be back. Come on, guys, let's get out of here.
Throughout the TV series, we never see Openface or any of his lackeys ever again. And you know what? Thank goodness. No, I'm not saying anything bad about Jason Leigh's portrayal as Openface. It's just that he's extremely ridiculous, even by Pete and Pete standards. His acting is incredibly over the top, and he's known for eating Openface sandwiches, and that's it. There's nothing remotely sinister or intimidating about that whatsoever. The Petes would have bullies throughout the series, such as Hathead, Pitstain, and Papercut, but at least they did threatening things once in a while being overly dramatic. The most reoccurring bully that Big Pete would have had was Endless Mike Hellstrom, played by Rick Gomez. And he's hands down a much better and memorable antagonist in every single way. He's the perfect balance of being a sadistic jerk, while at the same time playing as the silliest bully to the nth degree. He would debut in the first season episode Tool or Die.
Mike! Oh boy, that crash belt sure does ride like a Cadillac, huh? So, can you believe what Slurm has us making, huh, Mike?
Nice try, Carrot Head. About cut me a 2x-a-ply. Thanks, Sawboy.
Welcome to my nightmare.
That night, I expected to find the Kretschmars running for their lives and Endless Mike standing atop a pile of furniture laughing as flames burst all around him. Instead...
Little duck, Papa Duck.
Also, this was the first and last appearance of Mr. Beverley. I feel the opposite way about Mr. Beverley, in which his presence didn't leave that much of a huge impact on me. He wasn't bad, but he just wasn't much of a standout compared to the other teachers and school employees that would be featured later on in the series, such as Miss Fingerwood, Mr. Slurm, the shop teacher played by Jude Cicolella, Phil Hickle, the school guidance counselor and father to Ellen, played by Steve Buscemi, and Little Pete's principal, Ken Schwinger, played by Adam freaking West.
You may not know this, but I'm a personal friend of Johnny Earwax.
Johnny Earwax is a Heiner!
Johnny Earwax opened my ears to the sound of life, Mr. Wrigley, a sound you'll never hear. You think about that while you sit there.
That's it? You're just gonna leave me here?
That's right. And if you get up from that chair, you're in big trouble.
Ooh, the principal's chair. I better not get out of the principal's chair. You really think a chair can stop me?
Actually, I was counting on the secret trap door. Goodbye, Mr. Wrigley.
The episode concludes with Big Pete showing Ellen a drawing of a heart with her name on his hand as a Valentine's Day gift. Pete is disappointed that the secret was revealed, but Ellen promises there'll be more secrets in the future. For the most part, Big Pete and Ellen are shown as best friends, but in the first couple of shorts where Ellen was first shown, she introduces herself as Pete's girlfriend, with him stating that they're just friends.
Adventures of Pete and Pete.
Starring Pete, Pete's brother Pete, and introducing Ellen as Pete's girlfriend.
Look, you're a girl and you're a friend, and that's it!
The Adventures of Pete and Pete.
Starring Pete, Pete's brother Pete, and introducing Ellen as Pete's girlfriend.
Listen, you're a girl and you're a friend, but you're not a girlfriend.
Big Pete would say this statement in the pilot episode as well.
I knew what Ellen was trying to do, but no matter how high she counted, she'd always be a girl and a friend, but not a girlfriend.
But there had been moments in later episodes where they did started to fall in love with one another. At the end of the episode Day of the Dot, Big Pete breaks the structured routine of the school band to show Ellen that they joined the band in the first place because they had fun, and instead of being controlled and manipulated by their band instructor. They ended up sharing their first kiss. In the episode Time Tunnel, Big Pete borrows Endless Mike's car and asks Ellen out on a date at the drive-in during the end of daylight savings time. In the episode Crisis in the Love Zone, where everyone is being affected by spring fever, Ellen starts falling in love with Big Pete. There was never a conclusive answer if Pete and Ellen would end up being together, but I guess this is one of those cases in which it's up to the viewing audience's interpretation if they ever did. Another thing to bring up is the music that is featured in this episode. Hardcore Pete and Pete fans may recognize a lot of these songs that are played, since it's mostly performed by the show's house band, Polaris. The songs that are played in this episode consist of, obviously, the opening theme song, Hey Sandy.
You looking happily deranged. I can't settle in bed. Or have you picked your target yet? Hey Sandy, don't you dog bite? Hey Sandy.
Everywhere.
Hey, but what about the squid secret? Doesn't that mean anything?
And she is staggering in the credits. There are also 2 songs from the Magnetic Fields that are featured. They consist of The Flower She Sent and The Flower She Said She Sent.
So we did, in a special place where I figured school mascots deserve to go, the 50-yard line. You swear that you won't tell?
I swear. What if they dip you in acid? I'll never tell Pete, no matter what, even if they lower me inch by inch into the molten lava of a live volcano.
And Lovers from the Moon.
Of course, no one knew that except for us. Mr. Beverley kept hoping and praying that Edna was wiggling her way back home. Looking back, he must have felt pretty torn up inside, but I did too. We were more than halfway through the school year, and Miss Fingerwood still thought my name was
Whizzer?
Pete.
They also play occasionally throughout the series. The song She Is Staggering has been the outro song for most of the pilot season and season 1, until eventually more songs were acquired for later episodes. When looking back on the original pilot episode, the transition from 1-minute shorts to 24-minute episodes was done pretty well. There were some rough spots here and there, but the surreal tone was able to flow pretty consistently, just as well as the original shorts. The main characters were portrayed wonderfully. The plot was very odd yet entertaining, and the jokes were quite amusing. The show would only get better and better as time progressed, and the creators and writers had a better grasp on how to tell their stories to fit a 24-minute time slot. It's still to this day one of my favorite Valentine's Day specials ever, and it's up there with Hey Arnold as being my all-time favorite Nickelodeon Valentine's Day special. If you want a weird, quirky way to celebrate Valentine's Day that isn't too filled with mushy romance, then I highly recommend you check this episode out. It was the start of an amazing live-action series that's still regarded by many dedicated fans as one of the most well-written and timeless kid shows of all time.
Are you crazy, man? You didn't notice her? Well, you must be blind. 'Cause all I do now is think about how she will be mine. I couldn't stand up, I couldn't sit down. One look at her